I want to talk about the double slit experiment and also the relationship it has with the consciousness. And well, lately I've been looking at some of the videos that were made by or are being made by physicist Tom Campbell, and he carried this experiment to even further than most physicists had done. And I was studying this experiment many years, and usually most physicists kind of come to the conclusion that the consciousness of the observer had something to do with the pattern that the photons, either as a particle or as a wave, make on the screen behind the double slit. Okay, but they didn't really nail it down. They didn't carry the experiment even further. But what Mr. Campbell did, which is quite novel, is that he put detectors next to the slits, and after the photons or wave has gone through the slits, he also put a set of recorders that were communicating somehow with these detectors. So the recorders would always record the photon which slit it went through, and the detectors always detected. But in one experiment, Mr. Campbell would look at the result of the recordings and see if the photons went through this or that slit. Okay, and on the other side, even though the recorders are already recorded, he would not look at them. So the pattern of that the photons made on the screen, when he looked at the records, indicated that the light was a collection of photons, and when he didn't, it indicated that a wave has gone through, even though the detectors had already detected which slit the photon went through. So it didn't matter if a device that's not conscious detects the photon. It only mattered when the experimenter looked at the result and he knew in his consciousness that the photon has gone through one or other slit. So this is very important result that shows that the consciousness of observer is part of the universe and makes all the difference in the result of this experiment. Imagine just what you think has happened, or how you think of the light makes all the difference if it is a particle or a wave. Once the quantum physics established this concept or this result, and was shown physically through experiments many times that this is so, and the consciousness is a part of the universe, is a part of the experiment, and it makes a difference, then this kind of brought all of physics into an inflection point. Because prior to this, the physicists were all inclined towards Newtonian or reductionist philosophies. Well, reductionist philosophy is like, say you have a frog, you cut up the frog into many pieces, manageable pieces, and you study each piece separately, see how it functions, and then you try to establish the interrelationship between pieces, and then you put the frog back together, and hopefully you'll have the frog back. But that's not what happens in reality. The totality of the frog the living frog is what is important. What is that makes a frog, rather than the bits and pieces. So the bits and pieces of the universe, no matter how well defined or how small it is, and how the relationship between these bits and pieces are, when you add them up, it doesn't make the universe. It doesn't make a totality. Say, for example, you have a accelerator that you're accelerating protons, and you smash them against each other, then the photons break up into quarks, and then you can study the relationship between the quarks, and then when they combine, you hopefully get a proton again. But the relationship between the quarks, or the bits and pieces of universe, is so extremely complex, because the quarks, or the photons, or the protons, they interact with the rest of the universe, and either through electromagnetism or through other forces, and the space around the quarks, the space around the protons, is at constant communication and constant relationship with this particle. And if you try to break the quarks down too, you might be able to, I don't know how much energy you need to do that. you will get still smaller pieces, but the relationship between the components will become even more complex, and also they are in relationship with the rest of the universe. Okay, so what the Sufi master said, that any creature that you study, be it a photon or a proton or a human being, all of the knowledge of the universe, all of the universe is in relationship with this entity, with this animal, a frog, or a photon, or a proton, or a muon. Okay, all of the universe is interacting with it. Yeah, and in fact, there is no such thing as simply a photon, or simply a proton. It is only our mind that constructs this entity, and we call it the proton. It's in fact all of the universe that's in relationship with this particle. It is actually all of the universe that's projecting or making this photon or this proton. So, once these facts are established, then also it will lead to the non-locality of the universe, and there is more other ways of mathematically stating that that's also has to do with the phenomena of entanglement, that the very distant parts of the universe can communicate with each other. Like say, for example, you have two particles that were entangled, and they were generated from the same atom of mercury, and you send one side of the universe and the other one on the other side of the universe, and if you collapse the wave function of one, the other one across the universe, the wave function is going to collapse, and there won't be a time difference. The signal will not take a long time to get there, or any time. It will happen instantaneously. This shows that the universe is non-local. It's like a bacteria. It's an entity or a totality on its own. So my conception of the universe is that it's like a quantum computer is a totality that thinks and projects this reality that we live in, I think the reason for uh, this quantum computer to exist is that it's like a simulation machine. It wants to experience all aspects, all experiences that it could have. It's like a soul that wants to experience all stages of itself, from the lowest material world to the highest, which is its own consciousness. And once these ideas are established, then one is forced to look at the universe as a spiritual place. You cannot really study the universe and think of it in reductionist terms, or in the use the Newtonian physics to study this creature, because well, we just established that it's consciousness. If the consciousness of the experimenter can make the difference in the result of a physical experiment, that shows that the rest of the universe is also consciousness, and is reacting or in communion with a part of itself, which is a segregated kind of consciousness. So, for example, the Sufis say that the human soul is like a drop of water, and God is like an ocean. And when a person dies, this drop of water is freed from the segregation of the body and joins the ocean. Well, our physics is telling us that this is how the universe is, and how you can explain the universe. And I think that I've had some spiritual experiences. I think that when a person does not hold on to the conceptions or ideas that he has constructed. Say, for example, I construct a cosmology or a religious view of the world and project it in my mind. If I believe in this very, very strongly, then it will block the universe from communing with me, because when I want to look at the universe, I see these conceptions. I cannot see the universe as it is. So it's like you have a house and it has a lot of windows, and you could really watch the flowers and everything outside. But if you paint on these windows, all kinds of pictures, well, every time you want to look at the universe, you're going to see these pictures. You're not going to see the universe. This is the same way if you strongly practice Newtonian physics or reductionist philosophies or a religious view of the world, then it kind of tarnishes or darkens your the mirror of the heart that can perceive reality as reality is. For example, the Sufis say that when a person becomes enlightened, he has like a sight or a second sight that he could look at any object and he will see the essence of that object or that thing. Or he can look at God and hear God, or commune with the universe or the ocean. It's because there is no conceptions, no ideas that's already preformed that prevents you from looking at it the way it is. So this is very interesting because, say for example, you are studying particles in the accelerator, and they ratchet up the energy levels. You can study Higgs fields, Higgs particles, and go on from there. At higher energies, we probably find other particles that have higher energies or higher mass. But this is not discovering the universe and how the universe operates, because we are we are going into finer and finer aspects of the universe, but the relationships that these smaller and smaller particles have with the universe, it becomes immensely complex. And then at some level, at Planck's length, you're looking at the elements of the universe, which are just space quantas, and the relationships that are there are so immensely complex that's beyond mathematics. It becomes the universe itself, and then you're back again to the same level we were of having to look at the whole universe as a bacterium or as a totality. And then Mr. Campbell goes on and he talks about morality, and he makes some conclusion. But once you start from where he started, you understand that this is nothing but a quantum computer or a machine or a simulation machine that's simulating all these different scenarios, all these different planets, all these different individuals with different characteristics. And in fact, you are also in the same place that I am. You're going to be speculating or in spiritual terms. There is really nothing there that you could make an experiment and say, hey, okay, I ran this experiment like double slit experiment, and this is the result, and you cannot refute the result because we can repeat this experiment many times. You can't do that because you are speculating. You are a speculator like me. And what most researchers do is they end up going back to scriptures, or at the time the quantum physics was discovered, like Heisenberg and other founders of quantum physics, they went back to Eastern philosophies, they reviewed them to get a clue or understand these very strange dualities, that particle wave dualities. Like some went into Chinese philosophy of yin yang, but none of this stuff is anything that's tied to physics. Is really metaphysics and spirituality or religion. Well, I'm Muslim, and I am going to speculate a little bit too. I'm going to use Quran. It says there is a verse. It says Prophet asked him, "What are you? What's the reason for this whole world?" And God says, "Kuntu kanzan makhfiya." I was a hidden treasure that I wished to be known. And the Sufi master said that God created the world to be like a mirror, and this mirror to reflect her. Okay. Well, as you notice, I use the word her. Okay, because in the other lectures, so there are some indications that the divinity is not masculine, is more feminine qualities. Well, I'm going to review some of those reasons, but she created the creatures to see how far a given creature, even when he or she is afflicted with the physical world and impediments, will reflect her divine qualities. I think this is the underlying spiritual cosmology of Islam, is that God wants to see her own reflection and see how far a person went along this path, or how each experiences feel. It's like say a woman, she has very pretty hair, and that's a aspect of her. In Sufi theology, it's called tajalli, a manifestation of her. So she wants this mirror, or she needs this mirror, or she needs this certain individuals that are more refined to re-see or re-evaluate or kind of enjoy this this reflection. And when Mr. Campbell talks about like universe is like has entropy, and anything that lowers the entropy, like order and cooperation, that then that's something that this computer would want. Well, the Sufi master said that Sufi master doesn't believe in competition between forces or animals, but more like he said Slit, which means like helping each other or cooperation. So basically, what Mr. Campbell has arrived at, I don't think he the picture that he presents is very complete, is that morality or helping each other or love is more beneficial to this quantum computer in order for it to achieve what she wants. Or if people didn't cooperate with each other, there would be discord, and then lower aspects of her persona would show up. Whereas if they did, and their society was more spiritual, then she could observe the greater aspects of herself. Well, I think Mr. Campbell has kind of gotten this right, but I don't know, I think he's missing a few pieces. These ideas are very complex, and also the idea that the universe might have feminine qualities is kind of latent in Mr. Campbell's philosophy, is that it's trying to reduce entropy at all times, which is like very feminine. If you think of order and chaos as yin yang, well, order would be when things are going more smoothly in society or more spiritually, then that would be more feminine than the chaos is more a masculine quality. Then also, while I'm speculating some more, Imam Ali said that when God created the world, Imam doesn't use the word she or he. I'm using the word she. I think in original Arabic text probably was nondescript, but I'm modifying it and saying that she first created love, and then there came aql. Aql means intelligence and mathematics, stuff like that, physics. So it shows a certain slant or certain preference toward order and femininity than or love rather than chaos and competition, stuff like that. Well, I'm not trying to establish these ideas. They're kind of far out using mathematics, because you can't. I'm speculating like you. Anyhow, thank you for being in my YouTube channel, and please subscribe. Thank you very much.